Hi folks, it is time for another episode of Unclear Thinking. Sadly, we've had a few snafus on our end. Well, we were trying to get a new episode recorded in time for upload, and we ran into some bugaboos, so we weren't able to get it finished in time. We'll get that one up next time around. In the meantime, we're going to let you hear one of the beta episodes we did when we were doing some dry runs, practicing getting our feet under us, so to speak. So hopefully this will hold you, keep you interested. Hope you found the topic interesting, and check back with us in a couple of weeks, and we'll have a brand new episode ready for you to go. See you then. It's midweek again, folks. This is Larry Smoke. It's time for myself and Anthony Goodrow to discuss the world's ills and problems and see what kind of solutions we can come up with. Across the mic, there's Anthony Goodrow. Goodrow, what's happening down that way?
Hey, Larry. Good to talk to you again. Not a lot going on around here. Just I'm on vacation this week, so to keep myself busy, I've been cleaning around the house here and there. There's a little dusting here. A little shining there, and I got to the family trophy cases. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed was...
all those bowling trophies?
First of all, I have a grand total of one trophy to myself.
One?
One trophy to myself, and that was for a spelling bee I won in the 6th grade.
Oh, yeah.
They played baseball, they played in several different leagues, but every year, end of the season, everybody gets a trophy. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you this, I bet my one trophy that I earned means more to me personally than all those trophies combined mean to them. I don't know what your feelings are on that, but...
Well, I'll have to take your word for it. If memory serves, in my vast experience, I've accumulated one trophy as well, and it was a participation trophy. It was the one year that I played Dixie Youth Baseball, and I stunk. And I am fairly certain most everyone that in that town's league got a little 5-inch tall participation trophy. And heaven knows what became of it. Again, like you, even then I knew, well, I didn't really do anything to earn this, so it didn't hang around my possession long. But you're right, I don't have children, so I don't see it now. My wife is a elementary teacher. So we see it from that end a good bit, right. And you're right. And it's more than just sports. It's education. It's social activities. It's the need for artificial inflation of self-esteem is rampant.
And that's got to be at the basis of it. I'm not sure exactly where it started or who was behind it.
Oh, it started in the 60s. It had to. The self-esteem, the power of positive thinking, all of that. It had to be when it began.
I'm wondering if there is a big trophy lobby out there representing Big Trophy and trying to prop up the industry.
The trophy industrial complex.
Exactly. I personally don't know anybody who is behind this movement, yet here it is, and I'm sure it was the parents are behind it, the leagues are behind it, in the self-esteem movement that you speak of. It's not from the kids. I don't think the kids are clamoring for hardware after sitting the bench for 5 innings during a 7-inning game, like I did. Mm-hmm. But you're right. It's pervasive in the culture as well. It's graduation from every other grade.
I think it's been a creeping doom sort of thing. And at the risk of sounding sexist, I think it's become more and more prevalent as women have exerted more control over. I'm talking without thinking it out completely, so I'm probably digging a deep hole for myself. Over the last 50 years, since the early 60s, women have played a larger and larger part in the child's life outside the home. Am I right?
I can't argue with that.
So of course, that includes sports, extracurricular educational activities, and things like that. And the women in their nurturing role want to foster positive self-image, self-esteem, and as a result, and of course this is all a generalization, there are exceptions to every rule, but I would think that having women exerting more control over how youth sporting and extracurricular activities are conducted has increased the awards for no achievement.
That could be true. don't have any data to.
Oh no,
Um,
we're both just theorizing, and we have no.
right.
And there's scads of data probably arguing both sides of the equation. We could probably kill a 90-minute show just analyzing the data we would find on Google.
I think one would have a hard time defining self-esteem, much less measuring it.
Oh, I'm sure it's
Um,
different for everybody, child and adult.
and there's nothing that really says, and you've watched people grow up over the years, and people have some people have low self-esteem, some people have high self-esteem just naturally, but that in later in life, that really doesn't seem to weed out those who are what we call successful and those that aren't. You People with lower self-esteem aren't any less likely to succeed as long as their values are where they need to be in whatever they're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
Just because somebody is arrogant doesn't make them automatically successful, if that's the opposite of low self-esteem.
Eh, I don't think I could argue with that.
But let me tell you what I've noticed at my work.
Tell me.
We have probably 12 people that do what I do at work in my department.
Mhm.
Lately, turnover has been really high, so I've seen a lot of people come and go. The younger people, the ones in their 20s, have more of a sense of entitlement, self-entitlement.
Mhm.
When they come in, they expect the work to be a certain way. They wonder why it can't be this way. They moan and complain about everything. And most of these people have chemistry degrees. And they don't understand why they can't be off on their own running their own chemistry experiments or doing R&D work or something that's completely out of the scope of their job description. Whereas the people that we hire that are older are usually better employees if they'll stay because they understand their place. They understand what's expected of them, and they're given a job and they do it.
And for the sake of context, we'll remind everybody that you're involved in pharmaceutical manufacture. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct. There's an older man who is he retired from the Savannah River site. I think he's 55 years old. And he has, I'm not sure exactly what it's a degree in, but it's an advanced degree in science. And he is the most hardworking, diligent person we have as far as the ones I've seen come in the last 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
And the young people, all they do is complain and wonder why they don't get paid more money. And that's what it's about to them. Has to be a result of this self-esteem movement that is making children all seem like everybody wants to be told they're special.
Mhm.
And I know you don't see any cartoons any children's cartoons because
But I've seen The Incredibles, and I think I know where you're going.
well,
Once everyone is special, no one is.
that's right. Nobody is.
I love The
And
Incredibles.
that's just not life.
And you're right. I've seen articles and op-ed pieces about the entitlement generation, and I'm not exactly sure what age group that would specifically define, but I think we have a pretty much agreement that it's not ours.
Right.
That a generation of folks have gone through the education system without having to deal with failure. They may have deserved failure, but in the interest of, a combination of things, I'm sure it's difficulties in the educational system, funding, political pressure, etc., but a large part of it would be parents. And again, I'm sounding sexist. The mother's ever increasing role in parenting, insisting that their children succeed even if they haven't succeeded. I have seen an op-ed piece about the education system, and of course I don't have that in front of me, so I won't quote it and attribute it to somebody for fear of being mistaken. But the line was uttered in the piece that a classroom is like a battlefield, and no soldiers are left behind on the battlefield, so why should any children be left behind advancing through the grade system? Which I thought was an incredibly asinine way to look at it. but there is that mentality out there, and it appears to be pervasive because again, my wife being an elementary school teacher, she has failed children before and had her grades overturned because we're going to just send the child on through.
Because the child's parent lost her mind or his mind over their child being held back.
Sometimes it's even been grandparents losing their minds over their
Right.
grandchild being held back. And again, more often than not, well, we'll move them on through. And these are the folks that will be running our power plants and our municipal governments and our law enforcement. And I guess those of us with college degrees and a sense of victory and defeat and success and failure will end up digging the ditches.
It seems to me that what you're talking about has cheapened the high school diploma, because there's nothing wrong with the high school diploma, because there are numerous, probably more jobs than not, that really don't require any secondary education.
I agree. I would even go so far as to say that it's possible that the college degree has become overrated.
That's what I was leading to, because it's just, I just know people personally that I just don't know how they did it based on the work I see them do.
Where are the plumbers and the pipe fitters and the welders coming from into the skilled professions that require some intelligence, some training, some responsibility, but don't necessarily require a Bachelor of Science degree.
Right.
But every Dick and Jane pair of parents thinks that little Toby has to have a college degree, and that's not necessarily so. Maybe Toby would excel at building people's houses.
And enrolling my son.
I don't know any kids named Toby. Do you?
Personally, no. But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
my son's going to be entering college in the fall.
All right.
His degree, his major, he's declaring is biology, which is good. That's good. But that's almost a blind declaration in the sense that a year from now he might change his mind. I certainly didn't know have zero idea what I wanted to do when I was 18. But he'll find out, and they'll all find out. But it may be nothing for some people. The degree they get may have zero to do.
Oh, I know a handful of people, and I guess I could even argue myself included to a degree, no pun intended, that their college degrees remain unused. I mean, I'm in medical management. Both of my college degrees are in accounting, and I guess in a kind of sort of way that's applicable, but it's not necessarily the career path that I had in mind when I decided, okay, I'm going to get an accounting degree. And you and I both know folks that have political science degrees and English degrees, and they're driving medical delivery trucks or shoveling acetaminophen.
But you were onto something talking about competing in the classroom, because that's going to be something the kids are going to do the rest of their lives.
Yes, competition is not a bad thing, in my humble opinion.
People are going to they're going to compete against other people in their department. Sometimes they're going to compete against themselves. At many sales jobs, if you don't make a certain number, you get fired.
Yes.
And that's just, if you're not good, they're going to cut you loose. So competition is going to be there the rest of their lives.
Human survival is competition. And heaven knows that the earlier we learn that, the more likely we are to succeed. But people need to learn how to fail. Failure is a very important skill, and definitely should be learned as early as possible when it does the least long-term harm and could do the most long-term good.
How many stories have you heard of very successful people who will tell you how many times they failed over and over, and that was the best part of their lives because they learned something from it?
Oh, yes.
Wasn't Steve Jobs at Apple a long time ago and was fired and left and ran 2 other companies and then came back to Apple? Is that how his career went?
Pretty much, yes. He was fired from Apple, founded another company, and bought Pixar on the dirt cheap from George Lucas.
Pixar, that's correct.
And then turned around and sold next with himself back to Apple, and then made he didn't get rich at Apple. He got rich with Pixar. When Pixar got bought by Disney was when he made his billions. I mean, don't get me wrong, he made a fine living off of Apple too, but he made his billions off of Pixar. And again,
well,
yes,
speaking of,
hitting the lows by getting fired from the company he helped found, and picking himself up, dusting himself off, starting something else, and climbing back to the top of the mountain.
now that you mentioned Disney, Walt Disney was fired from uh, animation job he had when they told him he wasn't
Yeah, Walt Disney was
he
told he
didn't have
couldn't
enough
draw, I believe.
and that he had no imagination.
Mm-hmm. Isn't
He
that a
was told he
lark?
had no imagination.
It drives me bonkers when I hear stories about youth sports these days. I hear where some, and admittedly it's small children, the 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds, where scores aren't even kept.
Hmm.
And the answer is it's not supposed to be about competition at this age. It's supposed to be about having fun. Well, it's difficult to argue with that without sounding like a complete a-hole, but I'll argue with it because competition can be fun and constructive. And
That's why you play the game.
again, yes, well, if we're only out here to have fun, well, we could get the water hose and make us a mud hole and have fun. Why are we spending money on sports equipment if we're not competing? There are other ways to have fun.
That's why they assign point values to baskets and goals and things, is so they can add all the points up at the end and see who won.
And more often than not, in those no score kept situations, the kids know what the score is. They're keeping
Oh, yes,
score.
they do.
You know they know what the score is. So again, it's for the parents. And
Well, the sad part is, I think those no score leagues, some of that has to do with the behavior of the coaches. That's how it was. I was told one point one league was decided was because they had too much trouble with the coaches in the past, getting a little, overwhelmed by the emotion of the game with 6 and 7 and 8 year olds playing.
that's probably a
So,
problem to the other extreme. And like most things in life, the sweet spot is in the middle.
right.
Oh, I've told my wife before that I've thought about coaching Little League baseball myself for years and years and years. I've thought about that. I would love to be able to teach kids baseball. That would be a wonderful experience for me, and I would hope for them too. But I've never done it because I don't want to deal with the parents. And
No,
that's the
I've
only
been
reason
told
I
it's not
haven't.
worth it.
Yeah, I hate that I don't have the moral fortitude to overcome that, to try to help kids despite that. But I don't. I know myself well enough to know that I would not be able to handle that. If I knew I could be left alone and coach the kids, I would thoroughly enjoy it and do my best to see to it that they thoroughly enjoyed it. But I know society today would not let me do that, so I don't do it.
Hard to blame you there from what I've seen.
Mm.
Now, I've talked to my high school basketball coach. I went to see him. I was traveling on business a few years ago, and I happened to be in the town where he works now. And I stopped in his office and talked to him for a little bit, and he told me the reason he got out of coaching, or one of the reasons. And this was back when he was coaching me. He said that one year he was getting ready to cut some players. He had to cut the team down to 15 from 20, and a parent came to him who happened to be I don't want to say powerful, but an influential parent at
Influential.
the school, came to him and said, "You will keep my child on the team, regardless of anybody else you have to cut." And that was one reason he did tell me that, and that was one reason he didn't tell me who it was. He didn't tell me who he had to cut because of it, but that was the beginning of the end for him in coaching. He's in administration now.
What grade level was this? Was
This
it
was
JV or varsity or?
this was JV.
Okay.
This would have been 8th grade.
Yeah, that's what I was talking. That's right. I mean, not that I have any clue who you're talking about. I just was trying to get a mental picture of what age kids we were talking about. I'm sure that
So-
kind of thing has gone on since time immemorial. Immemorial. I'm looking at a blog entry from a woman in, where is this, Palo Alto, California, who argues in defense of trophies for all. So here's the other side of the argument.
I'd like to hear
And
that.
her take, and I'll paraphrase. Her take is she has her family, her children have 61 trophies on display in their home, and despite her efforts to have them weeded out, mainly because of the dust collection that the trophies gather, the kids actually resist it because the trophies are such treasured memories of their experiences. She goes on to say a trophy is a fun souvenir that that the reward is my word, not hers, for participating is a positive influence in getting them to continue the activity, and will fixate the memory of the experience in them as a positive one. And I don't know if I could disagree with that any more strongly. I would think, especially a child who has not fully developed their materialistic tendencies like we adults have, I would think a memory would be much more special to them than a token from the experience. And if anything, not having a token associated with the experience would help the child come to learn how to treasure a memory over a possession, over a material item. She says throughout this blog post that kids are already fully aware of how they measure up skill-wise, so it's counterproductive to emphasize the inadequacies of some by recognizing the success of others. And again, that's just so illogical. A part of growing up is learning what we can't do. And you hear some adults say that, oh, a child can be anything they want to be. We should encourage our children to be whatever they want to be. But that's a wonderful sounding sentiment, but it's unrealistic. We all have limitations. Our limitations may be flexible. We may find that we can do more than we thought. We may also find that we can do less than we thought. But nonetheless, we all have limitations, and part of growing and becoming a complete person is learning and accepting those limitations and making the best of the things that we can do.
Or getting better at those limitations.
Well, that's the flexible part.
But that whole thing you just read off is a big bunch of nonsense.
I agree.
I don't.
But that opinion is out there.
And again, that's the parents saying that. That's where the root of this issue is to begin with. And I can guarantee you, my little tiny spelling trophy, which I have kept since the 6th grade, in its lucite case, lined with velvet, locked with the key in a safe deposit box in a bank in the Cayman Islands, is more important to me than those little league trophies sitting up there on the shelf. And that will prove itself out when my children go to move out and I say, here, do you want this? And I guarantee you they're going to say nah. It's just they know they played baseball. The trophy's going to, even if they do take it, if they feel like they're obligated to take it, it'll go in a box in the attic. And I agree with what you said about the memories. People try to create mementos, physical mementos, rather than be satisfied with the memory itself in their mind.
And I wonder if a large part of the trophy mentality these days is, I don't know, this might be a which came first, the chicken or the egg type of question. I wonder if a large part of the trophy mentality is everyone's, and I'm using that in a very vague sense, everyone's apparent craving for self-aggrandizement these days. We've talked before about social media and everybody's, again, the general everybody's showing out, craving for attention. I wonder if that's today's heaviest social media users, the teens, the 20s, the early 30s, the social media addiction in that demographic. Is that a result of the everybody gets a trophy mentality as they were growing up? That they got a trophy for everything they did growing up, so they became used to being recognized, and as they move out into society at large and are not recognized as often, they turn to social media seeking recognition for everything they do in their everyday life. Or am I overthinking it?
Well, there's no reason to think that it couldn't very well be a natural progression of that. It seems to line up from a psychological standpoint, given my amateur psychological status. So, my psychology from a amateur
Sigmund Goodrow
standpoint. Yes. I think that comes from the same place in the brain. You put it that way. Well, do you play into it? If your hypothetical child comes home with a trophy, you pat him on the back and say, great job, or do you go, son, you didn't do anything. You're not all that special.
Again, hypothetically, because I don't. I would like to think that I would find a way to keep it positive without celebrating it. If it's a participation trophy, it's nothing to celebrate. I would hope that as this hypothetical child participated in the activity along, that I was positively encouraging him or her to participate. I wouldn't think that at the end of the participation there would need to be any celebration. Yay, you showed up every day.
Right.
I would think that would have been done along. But I certainly wouldn't want to make anything negative out of it either.
Right. I've never really, gotten the trophy and thrown it in the trunk on the way home and said, you don't need that piece of junk. We'll throw it away when we get home. But you see the behaviors that may be a result of that later down the road, and you have to explain to your children, get fair out of your vocabulary when it comes to life.
Oh, yes.
And prepare yourself for setbacks and to not win and to not be celebrated for doing what's expected of you. I think if you can get your child to understand that before you send them off on their own, they'll be a lot better prepared than a lot of the people that I see coming through in my workplace.
Oh, I told you the one trophy I received in childhood was a participation trophy, and I honestly don't remember what, if any, to-do was made out of it in my household. I remember my dad being encouraging of me playing along because I was a kid and I wasn't very good at it. But my father did his best to keep me encouraged and keep me wanting to go out and play. And I finished out the year. I didn't play again, so it must not have been that thrilling. As much as I love baseball, that experience wasn't thrilling enough to make me go back and do it. Nothing grand was apparently made out of it in my household, so I would think if it happened in a household of mine, it would probably fall along the same lines. It would kind of be a non-event.
I'm not sure why I put myself through Little League Baseball, that misery year after year. Because obviously I wouldn't get any better. But yeah, I bet I played 5 or 6 years of Little League Baseball. At least 4, but it was just a terrible experience to look back on.
I played the one, and I knew how bad I was. I would imagine that's why the next year, I stunk so bad. Why am I going back out? So right. I'm a much better spectator than I am a participant.
I go up to bat and I'm thinking, what, me again? Already? You sure? Pretty sure Toby was up next.
See, there is one named Toby. Well, as usual, I don't think we're going to solve the world's problems tonight, but we can certainly grouse about them with great talent, huh?
Well, it makes me feel better. I don't know about you.
Well, folks, if you have any great insight to add to this in-depth discussion, Anthony and I both are available via Twitter. I am at LASmoke, easily findable there. Goodrow, what's your handle on the Twitter?
It is at ANTHONYGOODROE.
All right.
And it's so long because my name is long.
We can't all be Tom Smith
Okay.
or Toby Smith. We'll come up with more answers to the world's problems and get together next time and see if we can hash them out with you.
Look forward to it.
So, till next time, toodaloo.